All right, guys, welcome. Justice Watch Live. A little late, but better late than never. Figured I'd come on here. Of course, we spring ahead tonight, so get your clocks ready. So technically, it's an hour later. So we're really beginning a late one tonight. But I figured, why not? Let's jump in here and have a talk. Like I said, I had intended to have a watch party today. Didn't go as planned. Had some things come up, and it just wasn't able to happen of the Rita Howington case. That's one that I want to watch. I did not get to watch it because I was busy covering the Rush trial, and then we're right into Crumbley. But I'm gonna start trying to cover some cases on the weekend. There was also a vehicular homicide trial. We're gonna watch the verdict in that tonight. And talk about that out of Tennessee, which is interesting. She ended up getting a lesser verdict than what she was charged with, but she put it was a situation where she was alleged to have driven drunk, but it was actually interesting. She had a pretty good defense attorney, and they found her not guilty of the drunk part, basically found her guilty of speeding. And it was a nuance that my dad used to talk to me about, was just because someone's drunk doesn't mean they get charged with, it doesn't mean they automatically will get convicted of killing the person, because they've got to prove that the drunkenness was the cause of the accident. And in this case, her defense successfully argued that she had a history of speeding and that it was speeding that caused it. So she was convicted of reckless homicide. So interesting case there. But we're going to get into all of that and more. So normally I would start out with comments, but just out of there really was no comments that really. Hold on a second. What's going on here with this? Oh, that's my arm on my microphone. I wasn't sure what that was. But anyways, just out of expedience for the night, given that it's a late one, we're going to kind of jump right into some of the content. So let's give me a moment here. We're going to fire up the first video and get into that. Give me a moment. All right, so I'm back now. We're in the justice camera room. Let me get the first video fired up, and we'll talk about this here. So the first thing I want to talk about is we're gonna watch the Howington verdict and the coverage that Court TV did. So we'll watch that, talk about that, and discuss that, and then we'll get into some Crumbley stuff. There's some updated news on Hannah Gutierrez, her lawyer, going public saying that she is apparently devastated and not doing well in jail. So that's interesting. We'll review some articles on that. Like I said, try to go about an hour if we can tonight, since it is late. I know a lot of people will be catching this on the rewatch, and I understand that. I've got to try to get this off a lot earlier so we can hopefully interact with people at a time that people are up. But is how it is. So let's share this here. I got to get this in. I think this is the one. Yes. All right. Full screen that. All right. So I believe I've got it up. This is courtesy of Court TV. Let's turn the screen share on. And there we go. All right, so let's watch this. Breaking news, verdict is in. So let's jump in here and check this out.
And we have breaking news out of Tennessee. We have a verdict for defendant Robin Howington.
I see the judge on the bench. Let's get you in the courtroom. Insane. Crazy. To think a 4-day long trial. And it was not a straightforward situation, but I guess it was for the jury in terms of the verdict, or in terms of the issues of the case. And there she is out on bond, or was out on bond. Well, I don't want to give away the verdict. What's going on there, Cam? Thanks for stopping by. How you doing, sir?
I'm going to ask that nobody be on the front row right next to the jury, please.
We are watching the Rita Howington verdict. The Court TV
Jury
coverage.
making their way into the courtroom there in Knoxville, Tennessee. She's facing life behind bars. F found convicted. She's been out on
Cam, I did get the
$250,000 bond with restrictions, including an ankle monitor.
I haven't had a chance to fully dig into all of those, but I did.
Ms. Howington took the stand
in her own
looking
defense,
at that
trying
case
to explain
away all of the different stories that she told police and investigators after the shooting of her 5-year-old daughter, Destiny, including that an unknown intruder, that it was her daughter's father that shot her, and then she changed it to her son. And these are all things that the jury has been considering in all of this. Let's bring in our guest for this hour that's watching along with us there. Trial attorney Michelle Thomas in Silver Spring, Maryland. And Ms. Thomas, I may have to cut you off as soon as the jury gets in the room there. Everyone's standing. But what are your thoughts on this case overall?
I think we're going to see a guilty verdict. There were just so many inconsistent stories that she told, and it's hard to reconcile that, I think, in a juror's mind. How she could have blamed the father, a 2-year-old. None of it made any sense, and I think it suggests she's lying.
All right, here's the jury coming in. Let's listen.
Please. Everyone may have a seat. Waive the call for the state. For the defense. If you could pass the verdict form up here, please, Mr. Morgan. Of this jury, is that correct? Yes, sir. I understand the jury has reached a unanimous verdict as to each of the counts contained within this indictment. Is that correct? Yes, sir. If you would stand, please, sir. Ms. Howington, if you would stand and remarks as to the first count of this indictment charging first-degree felony murder, has the jury reached a unanimous verdict?
Yes, we have, Your Honor.
And that verdict is what, please?
We the jury find the defendant Rebecca Howington guilty of reckless homicide.
As to the second count, alleging aggravated
She
child
avoided
neglect,
a life
has the jury reached
sentence
a
with
unanimous
that
verdict?
Yes, sir.
And that verdict is what, please?
We the jury find the defendant Rebecca Howington guilty of aggravated child neglect.
Unfortunately for her, that's a Class A felony, and it's a minimum of 15 years, maximum of 25
We
years.
the
So,
jury find the defendant
and
Rebecca Howington guilty of aggravated child
reckless
neglect.
homicide is a 2 to 4 year sentence
Initiating or filing a false
in the state
report to law enforcement. Has the jury reached a
of
unanimous
Tennessee.
verdict?
So,
That verdict is what, please?
We the
huge
jury find the
difference
defendant
between felony
Rebecca
murder
Howington
and
guilty of
reckless
initiating
homicide,
a
but
false
she's still
report to a law
facing
enforcement officer.
a sizable amount of time in prison, up to 25 years,
Has the jury reached a unanimous
and they
verdict?
can sentence
That verdict is
consecutively.
what, please?
We, the jury, find the defendant Rebecca Howington guilty of tampering with evidence.
And as to the sixth count, alleging attempted tampering with evidence, has the jury
And
reached
that
a
was
unanimous
because she
verdict?
disposed of the gun
That
outside
verdict
the
is what,
apartment.
please?
We, the jury, find the defendant Rebecca Howington guilty of attempted tampering with evidence.
If that is your verdict, if you would signify by raising your right hand, please. Let the record reflect all 12 hands are raised as either side wish for the court to poll this jury. All right, Ms. Howington, you may have a seat. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your hard work.
A partial
You have
victory,
concluded
obviously,
week
so she's
one
not facing
of
the
your
rest of her
jury
life in
service.
prison,
I
but
wish
she
I could
was
tell you that
facing
you're
a
done, but you're not. You've
large
still got
amount of time
one
in
more
jail.
week of service. I know
Or
that we've
prison,
got
I
another
guess I should
case
say.
starting here on Monday, so I'm sure I'm going to see a lot of you back on Monday morning when we're picking another jury. Have a very good weekend. Thank you very much for your service, and I'll see you on Monday. All rise for the jury.
So a large sentence that she's facing. Like I said, they can actually sentence her consecutive on that. So she's got the tampering with evidence, all of that. Now, most likely, Some of those will be sentenced consecutively.
The jury's exiting there in Knoxville, Tennessee. Michelle Thomas, you're still with us. Appears guilty on all counts. What's your reaction?
Worst case is
no surprise here. Her story just didn't add up. Saying that she was trying to protect her 2-year-old, that doesn't make any sense. So she certainly was. This was an expected outcome.
All right, let's listen in.
Aggravated child neglect, count 4, filing a false police report, count 5, tampering with evidence, and count 6, attempted tampering with evidence. The court revokes your bond. You're ordered into custody. When do we?
She's been out on bond for 5 years,
days.
Awaiting trial. So this
April
was
22nd. What day of the week is that?
Preceding Friday. Not a happy day for her.
Does Friday, April the 19th work for everyone for sentencing?
Yes, sir.
Is that good, General? Ms. Howington, I will see you on April the 19th. The court will conduct a sentencing hearing at that time. In the interim, a pre-sentence investigation report will be prepared. Probation will be interviewing you. If you wish to have your attorney present with you when that interview is conducted, you have a right to do so. I'll see you on April the 19th.
Thank you.
All right, so now we're going to listen to some of the analysis from Court TV's correspondents here as they jump in and talk to us about the case. But again, I did not watch this case
Michelle
closely.
Thomas, she's being taken back into custody. She's been out on that $250,000 cash bond for the past few years. Really, no surprise to a lot of people that have been watching along with us. Can you tell us what you think is going to be next? What kind of sentence? I know that the state is asking for life behind bars, but what kind of sentence are you going to be watching for?
I think she's looking at life. I mean, this was an unfortunate loss of life, a tragic situation. She didn't take any.
Yeah, that incorrect. She does
she
not
didn't
face
own
a
up
life
to any of it.
She avoided a life
pointed the
sentence
finger,
by
deflected
not being
throughout. She
convicted
tried to
of
destroy
felony
evidence. She was found guilty of that. I mean, of tampering. So there were many charges here for which she's been found guilty. The worst of which is obviously the loss of her child's life.
No,
I believe we're looking at life for her. Possibly without parole.
Yeah, and she was actually convicted of reckless homicide, so it looks like that's going to be 2 to 4 years, plus all of the lessers when you add all of those up. We're just getting these notes in here. I guess one of the main problems was her testimony, right? Because she had to try to explain away
2 to 4
all
years,
of the different
but
stories.
the issue
Let's
is
actually play a little bit of her on direct and
child
also
abuse, which is a
cross
Class
and get
A
your
felony.
reaction.
So she's getting 15 to 25 under the sentencing guidelines. In Tennessee.
I was walking up to my house, and it's a glass door, and I seen a flash of light go off. And when I walked in, Gavin was screaming and crying, and the gun was on the ground.
And did you see where Destiny was at that point?
Yes, she was on the couch.
And was she moving at all?
No.
Did you try to speak with her at all?
Multiple times.
I'm sorry.
Multiple times.
And did she ever respond to you at that point?
No, sir.
What was going through your mind at that moment?
I couldn't believe what was going on.
What did you do?
I got the gun and I took it outside.
Why did you take it outside?
Because I didn't want it to cause any more harm.
After you put the gun outside and came back in, what did you do?
I got a towel and put it on Destiny.
I'll continue to say the same thing, ma'am. I was trying to protect my son, and you just can't accept that this was an accident. You just can't accept it.
Ma'am, you had asked multiple people to come and pick up that gun that you put outside your home, had you not?
To protect
A yes or a no? Had you asked multiple people to get that gun from outside your house, yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Now she may explain her answer, Judge, when she's answered yes.
I think she has, but if you want to, again, explain your reasoning for doing so.
I was trying to protect my son, and nobody wants to accept that. What would you do?
Can I?
A lot of the viewers at
Incredibly
home
tragic
pointing out this,
situation.
Appearing to wipe away tears there on the stand when being asked the tough questions, but no tears, no emotion with the reading of the verdict. Michelle?
That's often what you refer to as crocodile tears, and it was too little too late for this jury. Certainly she's upset that she got caught, but we didn't get a real sense of empathy and regret and in real remorse from her. It's easy to cry after the fact, but where was she during the incident, during the time? Even if it was her child who pulled the trigger, she is ultimately responsible for being grossly negligent during that tragic loss of her other child's life.
Right, and Michelle, it was kind of a slam dunk for prosecutors with some of the lesser charges here, the false police report, because she told so many different stories, and then also tampering with evidence because she wipes the gun and then throws it under a bush in her backyard.
Yeah, and so when you have that, and she also tried to destroy her cell phone records as well, text messages. So none of those facts bode well for her. I mean, I think the jury had really no choice but to find her guilty on these lesser included charges based upon her own conduct after the fact, which reeks
she pretty much admitted to it in the testimony, but I think that was the strategy.
And you're a family attorney. I mean, the real tragedy in all of this is really family torn apart. She loses the life of her daughter.
The downside to the
verdict
the jury gave is that aggravated
and
child
then
abuse because
also she had a little 2-year-old
because it's a Class A
boy
felony.
It was involved in all of this. I mean,
it's going to result.
It's just tragic all the way around. There's no winners.
Absolutely, because now you have another child who's essentially going to be motherless for a period of time while this defendant is locked up, incarcerated. So it's really tragic. They will all have to cope with the loss, the experience. That child who was also present may have horrifying memories down the road. So it's a really sad situation. And to your point, Matt, no one wins.
All right, Michelle Thomas, thank you so much for your insight on this. You're not going to go anywhere. We have much to talk about on this busy Friday here at Court TV.
All right, so, wow. I mean, like I said, it's a mixed verdict for her because she's going to be she still has a significant sentence ahead of her. The jury obviously didn't believe that she shot her kid like those. I believe that was the theory of the state. Again, I'm not going to speak too much on the case because I don't know a lot about the case, and it is a case I'm intending to catch up on and watch on the weekend. It will not necessarily be this weekend, but on the weekends, I want to start using weekends, some evenings, time to catch up on cases I missed because there's so many cases out there that we can watch. There's really only time for one during the week. This is one that I'm interested in because it's wow. I mean, what a tragedy. Now there's another case out there. All right, let's jump to the next case that we're going to take a look at before we get into talking about the Crumbley case, which we're going to be talking about a lot anyways, because it's our case of the week, so to speak, I guess you could say. Let me see here. I've got to get to there it is, playlist. All right, so let me go in here and let me see here. Where is it at? All right, I gotta find it here. Trying to find this thing and all right. Oh, there it is. Okay, let's point in here.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. We are ready to proceed with the opening statements.
Now, this is
attorneys.
not a national case by any means.
State, you may proceed.
But it's a case out of Tennessee. It's one. Interestingly enough, there are Zoom feeds that you can tap into in a lot of states that are Zoom feeds.
3
for judges. And this is where I found this case. And it's one we're going to cover. We're going to watch. And to give you the background on the case, we're going to watch the verdict. so if you want to not know what the verdict is on this case, for when we do watch it, you may not want to watch it now, but I don't mind knowing a verdict before we come in because it's interesting. I think I already gave it away in the introduction, but if you were watching or watching from the beginning, but this is a case where lady got in a car accident, individual passed away, and she is charged with DUI with death, essentially vehicular homicide. Now, here's an interesting thing. Tennessee has a law. Okay, this is a law on the books. No other state has. It's actually crazy. And in this case, if you kill a parent, and it is a vehicular DUI, vehicular homicide, Tennessee now has a law that says if you're convicted of vehicular manslaughter or vehicular homicide via DUI, that you will have to pay child support for the surviving children until they turn 18. So keep that in mind as you're listening to this verdict, because the individual she killed, I believe, has children, because they added the name of the defendant here to that bill that passed. So the key here is they have to find, though, if they convict her of vehicular homicide, if she gets convicted of vehicular homicide, and then the jury has to make a finding that it has to do with DUI, okay, then she would be paying child support to the children of the individual she killed. So just pay attention to that, because if she, when you're listening to this verdict, like I said, she's charged with 3 counts, and we're going to pick it up now. Unfortunately, because it's a Zoom feed, you're not going to see the defendant in the verdict. You do see her during the trial, but let's watch the verdict here, and then we'll talk about it a little bit more.
We have everyone back. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm told that you've been able to reach a verdict. If you have, well, I guess we haven't got everybody back. So. All right, let me try this again. Ladies and gentlemen, if I understand correctly, you've been able to reach a verdict. Is that correct? All right, would the foreman or forelady please stand? As to count 1 of the indictment on the charge of vehicular homicide by intoxication, how does the jury
This is the one that sets off the child support rule.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
As to the lesser included offense under count 1 of driving under the influence, do you find the defendant guilty or not guilty?
Guilty, Your Honor.
Count 2 of the indictment as to the charge of vehicular homicide by recklessness, how do you find the defendant not guilty or guilty?
Not guilty.
As to the lesser included offense of reckless homicide, how do you find guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
As to the lesser included offense, criminally negligent homicide, how do you find not guilty or guilty?
Guilty.
In count 3 of the indictment,
what was the name of that bus driver?
I want
to look into that case.
How does the jury find the defendant rather guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
All right, so that if I may make sure that I'm correct about this, then on count 1, the defendant has been found guilty by you of the lesser included offense of driving under the influence. On count 2, the jury has found the defendant guilty of criminally negligent homicide. And on count 3, the jury has found the defendant guilty of driving under the influence. Am I correct? Ladies and gentlemen, is this the unanimous verdict of all of you? If you will, signify by raising your right hand. Let the record reflect that it is the unanimous verdict of the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, I know you've worked hard on this case. Thank you for
so you will hear she's going to get released or be allowed to remain out on bond. She was convicted of misdemeanors only, and she avoided having to pay a lifetime of child support to the victim's children. So huge victory here for the defense, which is why I'd like to see it's a 3-day trial.
We're going to excuse you from any
the first day of trial, I think, only has like 2 hours.
Spent 3 days of your life
and then the next day of trial
I know that was
is a full day. but it's
probably
only
couldn't
6
do, but I
hours.
think under
And then this day
circumstances,
only
3
has
days,
about an hour and a
are
half at the
sufficient. So
beginning.
you will
It's a
be
very
released from
short
any,
trial. It's one we could
well,
probably knock out in a
one
day. It's the
of
perfect
you has
thing
been
for like a
requested to be
weekend day
kept on,
trial that
but
we
it's
can
not her. So,
cut out the breaks
ladies
and
and gentlemen, if you will go with
the
Officer Howell,
BS.
he'll let you get your items and he'll
And
give
get
you
through
the
it
court.
relatively
So,
quickly and
thank you
even
for your
speeding
time.
up some testimony when it's not videos and stuff. So I would just need to be behind the controls. It's not one I can go out and mobily watch with you or anything like that. We have to watch it. I'm going to have to be here the whole day, but this will be, I'm looking
jury
forward to
having found
watching
the
this
defendant
case.
guilty of 3 different offenses, the court will need to set a sentencing hearing. We'll order a pre-sentence report.
I believe it's like she could be sentenced to probably up to, I think,
we have a criminal docket on
up to a year on each of those, if I'm not mistaken. I think the
June. Will that be
DUI, the
sufficient
separate
time?
DUI count, I think might be up to 6 months. I have to look it up.
On the 5th on the 5th of June, I show that we have Paul Garrett motions in the child rape case, and then the 6th that carries over. So
You can check this judge out. His entire docket is online. Every day of court is online. So he's got several interesting cases he's done recently. And there are several other judges you can watch like this. But anyways, let's all right, so that was, in my opinion, that, like I said, that was an interesting verdict. I think that was obviously a victory for her. I mean, she's getting a real break there, and she's very, 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 very lucky. Okay, let's see here. I'll try to get back into my playlist here. All right, let's see here. We've got one more verdict we're going to watch, and this is another vehicle related. This was out, I believe this was in Tennessee as well, if I'm not mistaken. All right, and this one is this was Tennessee. So this was a assault case. This was no death, but this was a case where an individual was this young man was out on bond. This was a controversial situation. He was out on bond and had like over 200 violations of his bond. Now, his attorney said these were minor violations, like kind of like what Mr. Tucker got in trouble for, not charging his ankle monitor because he was at work, stopping off to get cigarettes on the way home from work. But the issue at hand here was he was driving this vehicle without a license, and he was out on bond, which is obviously a huge problem. And he ends up speeding and crashing into a car, and it ends up essentially causing this young lady to lose her legs. Very sad, very tragic case. So we're going to take a look at the verdict here. This is the verdict that goes down here. His name is Daniel Riley. Like I said, this is out of Tennessee. And let's watch. And this just happened on Friday. So these are all cases that just happened. Now, unfortunately, his full trial, there are clips of his trial. There are clips of certain testimony, but they did not air, and I could not find where his trial aired. It might be somewhere. I've got to continue researching it. But the news channel here that I'm subscribed to, and there's the victim right there coming in. You're going to see she's got no legs. She was coming from a volleyball tournament. She was a high schooler. I mean, intensely tragic situation for this stuff happened.
All right, before we get started, I want to make it clear to both sides. I am well aware of the emotional nature of this trial, and this has been a long week. I've been informed that we have a verdict. But this case is two parts. There is the guilt phase and there is a potentially penalty phase. So I want to caution everybody not to react to the guilt phase, not in front of the jury, because if there is a finding of guilt, then there will be a punishment phase. After we get the verdict, we will take a recess because there's some things that we need to do. But if you have some emotion, I'd ask that you hold it till outside of the hearing of the jury. If you don't think you can do that, then you need to leave now. Because if you scream and yell at this phase of it, I will ban you from the rest of the trial. Does everybody understand that? So if you want to be present, control yourself, at least until the jury is outside of your hearing, and then you can have, will be a moment for emotion, and then we have to get back at it. Did everybody agree to do that? Yeah. All right, thank you. All right.
Like I said, I've got to try to locate. I'm sure, being Tennessee, just like that other judge, there's probably a zoom camera angle on this. But
all right, four person, please stand. Have you reached the verdict on all 5 counts?
Yes, Your Honor.
Please hand all the paperwork to my sheriff, please.
and this, and believe it or not, what the judge is doing, he's going through the verdict forms. There's actually situations in the past where jurors have forgotten to fill out the forms. All right, here we go.
They appear to be in order. As to count 1, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty of assault in the 2nd degree as submitted in instruction number 5. As to count 2, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty of armed criminal action as submitted in instruction number 7. As to count 3, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty of assault in the 4th degree as submitted in instruction number 8. As to count 4, we, the jury, find the defendant not guilty.
The individual you saw in the background leaving, that was actually supported. I believe that was his brother or a cousin of his. He was so upset by the verdict, he left the courtroom because obviously he was, respecting the judge's admonishment not to have an outburst. But his family was very, very upset. I haven't been able to figure out if he was out on bond right now or if he was incarcerated. This happened a year ago, but very emotional verdict here because this young man's facing a lot of time in jail, and we're getting into what the jury recommended here in a minute.
Count 5, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty of driving without a valid license as submitted in instruction number 10. Is there a desire to poll the jury?
No, sir.
All right. At this time, we're going to proceed to the punishment phase. So, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I'm going to excuse you. There's some things we have to do here shortly, and then we'll bring you out for the punishment phase. Until you retire to consider your verdict as to punishment, you must not discuss this case amongst yourselves or with others or permit anyone discussing your hearing. Please do not do any research or investigation on your own about any matter regarding this case or involved in the trial. Do not communicate with others by any means. Do not read, view, or listen to newspaper, radio, electronic communication. It'll be about a 10-minute recess. We're in recess.
All rise.
All right, so there you heard it. He's found guilty, right? And, well, hold on. We're going to get into a little bit later. They go through the sentencing phase where the victim gets to speak, and
This tragedy has severely.
And here we go. We're going to play the news clip here. It's a 3-minute news clip that will go over what the jury recommended. Now, the judge gets the ultimate say in this sentence, but this young man, you got to think this is a speeding case. So I want you to think about this. This wasn't DUI. This wasn't texting and driving. He's speeding. He was exceeding the speed limit. So my dad used to always say, the one entrance for a regular person who's not a natural criminal. Now, this guy, to be honest, obviously one of the things that made headlines in this case is he was out on bail for robbery at the time of this. And like I said, he had over 200 infractions, had his bail reviewed by 4 judges, and nobody revoked the bond. And he was out and he's speeding and then he's driving on with no license. And he hits a car and maims this lady or this young lady, and she loses her leg. So there's a lot of outrage. So with that background, we're going to watch this. This is courtesy of News 4 out of Tennessee. And we're going to let's watch this, and this will get into what the jury recommends.
My life. I would not let this define who I am and what I bring to this world. Therefore, I wish that you give Daniel Riley, the man who changed my life forever, the max that you can give so he can learn from this.
A young woman giving the final say before a jury weighs in on sentencing. Tonight's proceedings and the Daniel Riley trial stretched into the late hours.
A jury just recommended he spend up to 19 years behind bars in a case that has captured the nation's attention.
Now, earlier this evening, Riley was found guilty of 4 charges, including assault and armed criminal action.
Melanie Johnson has just left the courtroom not too long ago, and she is breaking down what happened during the penalty phase
this
tonight.
Is not
Melanie?
In Tennessee. This is in St. Louis. I don't know why I thought
Sam McCoy,
Tennessee.
A late-night decision coming down by this jury about how much time Daniel Riley should spend behind bars.
It might have been a
after
Tennessee
finding
news
him
station.
guilty. This comes after an emotional week of testimony as a young victim faces the man she says changed her life forever.
I will never have an easy, normal life like I did before.
With tears falling down her face, Janae Edmondson turned to 12 jurors, asking for Daniel Riley to face the maximum consequence to the man responsible for her having to learn how to walk and stand again.
I pray that no family and nobody has to ever endure what me and my family have gone through.
Daniel Riley, while looking on in the courtroom, learned a jury found him guilty of 4 charges after 3 hours of deliberation. Jurors recommended Riley receive 6 years and 3 months for second-degree assault, 11 years and 8 months for armed criminal action, and 10 months for fourth-degree assault. This means Riley could face up to 18 years in prison. This all after the February 18, 2023 crash, causing injuries so severe Edmondson's legs had to be amputated. She was at a volleyball tournament in downtown St. Louis.
Some things that used to be so simple, like taking a shower, I have to adjust. I now have to take showers sitting down because I have no legs.
Riley was given the opportunity to take the stand before and after the verdict, but he declined.
My daughter was hurt so bad that day, but it could have been anyone's daughter. Could have been anyone's aunt, anyone's sister.
Janae's mother told the jury she wants Riley to fully understand the consequences of his actions on that fateful day.
He was reckless and abandoned that day when he took off in that car. He cared for no one but himself. He had no concern for no one, especially Janae, that night.
Daniel Riley was found not guilty on charge related to that other driver involved in that crash. Even though his family did not want to speak, what Daniel Riley did do in that courtroom, he wanted to hug his mother for a final time. Now, this 18-year sentence is just a recommendation for this judge. That judge will have the final say during a sentencing hearing scheduled for April 18th. We're live downtown. Melanie Johnson, First Alert 4.
We'll be watching that. All right, Melanie, thank you. Stay with First Alert 4 on air and online as we continue to follow these breaking developments. You can also watch Janae's full testimony right now on the First Alert 4 news app.
A day full of
All right, so if you're wondering, an 18-year sentence in Missouri. Missouri gives basically 5 days a month good time. So he would have to serve 15 out of those 18 years in prison in Missouri if the judge would give him 15 years. Now, the judge has a lot of discretion where they can make sentences run concurrent. They can, some of it might run consecutive. It's going to all be up to the judge, up to the probation department, who's going to do a pre-sentence report on him, and obviously I'll keep an eye out looking for when he is officially sentenced on that. But again, it's an interesting case because it's like, obviously what I always find in these cases, like this is, they're horrible, right? Somebody got injured, this young lady lost her legs, but at the end of the day, it's while speeding is intentional, this isn't the same. It's kind of akin, especially in the fact that she didn't lose her life. It's kind of crazy to think, he's speeding or there's various different ways an accident can occur, right? So it's tough when you say a car accident happens and then people are like, we want to punish this person like they shot the person. But 18 years, wow, it's just crazy because, like I said, this is a car accident can happen to anyone. And in this case, he just had a bad circumstance prior to the car accident, which made them throw the book at him. Again, I didn't watch the trial, so I'm not going to speak too much on it or pass judgment on the jury's verdict. The jury watched that trial. They took in the evidence. I'm going to trust that they made the correct verdict in this case and didn't go on emotion. But we all know, as in the Jennifer Crumbley case, when you have a young lady sitting there with no legs in front of you, there's a sizable amount of emotion that's going to kick in, and that can end up influencing the the feelings of that jury when they're assessing the case. And that's always a concern of mine is, are they judging the evidence or are they judging the emotional aspect of the case? But so those are the three verdicts we're going to watch. So let's jump back in here to my playlist here. We've got to go in here. All right. So now we're going to jump into some interesting information regarding Hannah Gutierrez. Okay. So we're going to switch gears a little bit because her attorney has been very busy talking to the press in the last few days. So, and he's had some interesting things to say. So I want to jump in there and kind of take a look at that. Let's get the first article up here. Share this tab instead. Hopefully. All right, good. And all right, let's make sure we can see it really well. All right, there we go. I think that should be lined up well. All right, now let's jump into our document review room. Jump on the tablet there and pull this up. So there we are. Hannah Gutierrez-Reed was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter. The armorer was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter on March 6th. She could face up to 18 months in jail. Her attorney, Jason Bowles, conveyed to TMC that she is having a really difficult time adjusting to life in prison. The sentencing date has not been set yet. Hannah Gutierrez-Reed's guilty verdict has the family devastated. The verdict has left Gutierrez-Reed's family devastated, with plans already underway for a visit. Hannah's family is already setting up a time to visit her, the outlet reported. It added that Gutierrez-Reed's family and her loved ones have been devastated by her guilty verdict for the involuntary manslaughter. The courtroom was taken aback when the jury, after 2 hours of deliberation, found her guilty of manslaughter, though she was acquitted of tampering with evidence. As Gutierrez-Reed began her sentence, her mother's emotional distress was visible to all present. Bowles told the publication they will be appealing her conviction, seeking to overturn the verdict and judgment. Helena Hutchins' family wants all those responsible for her death to face justice. Following the verdict, Hutchins' family expressed their desire for all responsible parties to face justice. The Hutchins family's attorneys, Gloria Allred and John Carpenter, stated their satisfaction with the jury's decision and their anticipation for a legal system to hold others accountable for Hutchins' death. This statement indicates they want actor Alec Baldwin to be convicted too, who is set to stand trial for involuntary manslaughter in July. Let's see here. Baldwin, 65, faces the same potential sentence if convicted. He has maintained never to have pulled the trigger of the prop gun, which had a live bullet and hit Helena. And then it goes into stuff about Alec Baldwin. So, thoughts on this, chat? Let me know what your thoughts are on Hannah's tough time in prison. Obviously, we think about the fact that Helena Hutchins' family is dealing with never seeing their loved one again, but I digress on that. Now, this is the coverage. It should be the coverage. Let me see here. No, we're still all right. Let me see. What are we sure? Okay, good. We're into TMZ. So this is the coverage. That's what I heard. That's what you guys were telling me the other night. And she still has another one. So, and that one could even face longer prison sentences. So if she's struggling, listen, I mean, I disagree with the judge's decision to remand her right away. I think that was a bit of a knee-jerk reaction. And I think she was placating or playing to the media and wanted to look tough, didn't want to look weak in front of the cameras. And I think that's a shame because here's the thing. When you have a case like this where, appeals commonly take up to 3 years. So what's the use of appealing a sentence if you've got to serve if by the time the appeal works its way through the court system, you've already served the time? Now, maybe you get it off your record, but you can't undo that. So, in situations where you have a excessively long sentence, I understand why you would remand somebody. In this case, there's appealable issues, or at least her attorney should have had an opportunity to have prepared what they believe the issues are so they can be reviewed, and they could be assessed as to whether or not they're considered to be viable options or viable appealable grounds. But for the judge to just remand her on an 18-month maximum sentence, that was wrong. And I understand that death was involved, as the judge said. And I understand the judge is quick to say, I want her to at least have had some form of punishment because I have a feeling at some stage she may be released on bond. But he was just wrong. And it just showed this judge wanting to play to the cameras. And that's not good. That's not right. You don't do something just because the cameras are watching like that. Certainly not something as extreme as sending someone to jail. And she was prepared for the possibility, Jason Bowles said, but obviously when it happened, it was a little bit different. So let's read here. Jail is hell for Hannah Gutierrez-Reed. The Rust Armorer is having a tough time behind bars as she awaits sentencing for her manslaughter conviction. Hannah's lawyer, Jason Bowles, tells TMZ she is having a really difficult time in her new digs, a New Mexico detention center. We're told Hannah's family is already setting up a time to visit her, and her loved ones have been devastated by her guilty verdict for the involuntary manslaughter in accidental shooting death of Helena Hutchins. Hannah was found guilty Wednesday and was quickly booked into the Santa Fe County Adult Detention Center, posing for a mugshot. As you know, and it gets into this various different things we already know about. But I mean, again, I understand why her family would be upset about this. I understand why Jason Bowles is upset about this. But it's a shame that the judge decided to do this. But obviously, there's not much that can be done about it at this particular point besides Jason Bowles needing to expedite his motion. He needs to get it filed immediately to get her released. Because, again, like I said, it's a short sentence. There is no reason for her to be serving that sentence yet. and especially if there are things that are New York Post. What's this? Let's see what we got here. Oh, okay, that was something old. I saw the, but anyways, that's just that's a concern of mine. I really do have a concern with that. So I understand how she's feeling about that. Now, while I do agree with the verdict, okay, according to now things I have learned though, and I've been watching Crime Circus's coverage. He's put up some interviews that have definitely given me pause and have made me consider the potential. And again, I'm just saying, consider the potential here. Now, it doesn't take away from the fact, it would take away from the fact, okay? But it appears there could be evidence that she was set up, it looks like, by Sarah and Seth. That's what it looks like. It looks like Sarah did not like her. Seth did not like her. It looks like their opinion of her was that her father was about to retire and that he was wanting her to take over basically what he had been doing for years. And apparently her father was a legend and they didn't feel she was very competent. So it strikes me that, and according to Jason Bowles, they know who brought the actual live rounds on. Apparently they have evidence that was not able to get in because, again, just like in the Tucker case, sometimes you have things that can't get before a jury that because of the way trials work and the requirements to put things before a jury. But apparently, from what I saw and was watching, and it's not on I can't find the interview again, but apparently the belief is that they were wanting to set her up to get her fired. In other words, they knew she was careless. They were not intending for anyone to get killed or hurt. And the idea was that they were going to slip some live ammo in. Someone would fire a live shot, and then she would get fired and kicked out forever, and it would be done. No one ever thought Alec Baldwin was going to do what he did and fire that gun in a church in close proximity. Now, the problem is here, guys, and this is why this is significant, is some would say, well, she still had to be careless in order for that to go through. Yes, but if someone intentionally interjects live ammunition with the intent to set her up, unfortunately, it actually becomes an intervening cause, and it actually is a defense. It is a real defense, recognized defense that would allow her to be found not guilty of involuntary manslaughter because she could not have foresaw that somebody was going to try to set her up, and by interjecting that into the situation with the intent to try to set her up, that would actually negate that. It would actually be a legitimate intervening cause. So if this is true, it actually does make her innocent, even though she was neglectful, even though she was careless, even though that was the point of what they were trying to accomplish. They weren't trying to kill anyone, but they knew it was dangerous. So they become the ones that should be prosecuted instead of Hannah. But the problem is, according to Jason Bowles, from what I saw, is that evidence wasn't able to make it in. Now, let's watch. Let's go back in here, and I think it might actually be. Oh, here it is. I think it actually might be in this broadcast here because this is the next thing we're going to do. We're going to watch some of this court TV broadcast following it. I believe Jason Bowles was interviewed in it, covering this. So let's jump onto this here. Give me a moment, and we'll switch back into. Get this back. We'll get this up.
A-list celebrity and
Alamo 13 Days of Glory. He was a joy to work with. He would hand you back.
He's won Emmys, Gold. Alec Baldwin is an A-list celebrity and big-time Hollywood actor. He's been a fixture in Hollywood for 5 decades. He's won Emmys, Golden Globes, and been nominated for an Academy Award.
So here we are. This is
Famous
the coverage
and
Core TV
powerful.
did
Hannah
the night
Gutierrez
of
is a
the verdict.
24-year-old armorer. She first worked and trained under her father, Thel Reed, a legendary gun wrangler in Tinseltown. Alec met Hannah when he was starring and producing in a low-budget Western called Rust. Hannah was hired as the armorer, in charge of the guns and ammo on the set. For Hannah, this was just the second film she was working as lead armorer. For Alec Baldwin, this was his 95th film. On October 21st, 2021, Baldwin was rehearsing a scene with a cross draw, and while rehearsing, the gun went off. The bullet struck cinematographer Helena Hutchins and director Joel Souza. Joel survived, but Helena did not. And now both Alec and Hannah have been charged with involuntary manslaughter. Hannah's trial was first, and now after all the evidence has been presented and all the arguments have been made, it's time for the jury to render a verdict regarding Hannah. Meanwhile, Alec will face a jury this summer. Tonight, we take a look at what we learned during the trial of Hannah Gutierrez and see how it will impact the upcoming trial of Alec Baldwin as we continue our investigation into the death of Helena Hutchins.
I'm Vinnie Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. Another big day on your front row seat to justice. It was Judgment Day for Hannah Gutierrez, and it didn't go well.
No, it did not.
Think about where she is right now tonight, folks. She's not free. She is behind bars. And for Hannah Gutierrez, think about how she got there. Let's take a moment to think about how she got there. I mean, it's clear that this was someone who was in over their head, doing a job she was not prepared to do. Say what you want about young people. You have to get your experience somewhere, somehow.
I agree.
She wasn't
I mean,
ready.
as I've looked deeper into
She was
this
not
case,
ready. She wasn't ready in her first film.
Yeah.
When Nicolas Cage is screaming at her, she clearly wasn't ready in her second film. And I think about the people who
why did they hire her? That's what I can't understand.
And let her be in charge of deadly ammunition, deadly weapons on the set of
And she makes a very convenient scapegoat as
24
well.
is young.
I have to agree.
24 is young. I don't care how many years.
I
That's
agree, Vinny.
young.
I agree.
And when you're the armor, you need to stand up to everybody on that set.
Yes.
You need to be in charge of the guns.
Yes. Yes.
And I don't know. I don't know if I was 24 years old and I'm on the set with Alec Baldwin and a director and an assistant director, and they're all trying to make budget. Let's go, let's go, let's go. We're losing money. We're losing money. Are you going to stand up to them? But that's the job. She took the job, unfortunately, for her, that she wasn't ready for. And I think the folks who put her there have to think about that right now. Say, why did we do that? There were things she didn't know. And that even came out in the text messages during the trial.
Yep.
I wish you taught me this. I wish you guys had taught me that. Well, she needs to know everything before she's so. This is like putting someone in an airplane for a solo flight, not being ready for a solo flight. Set up for failure.
Like I said, her attorney said they know who brought the ammunition on.
I don't think anyone on the set of this movie was evil. I think people were covering themselves a little bit.
Oh, absolutely.
But no one intended what happened to Helena to happen, obviously. No. And I don't think anyone intended for a live round to end up in that gun. But it did. And the jury spoke.
For debate.
Now, let's not forget, though, it's not just Hannah Gutierrez here. It's not just Hannah Gutierrez. Yes, she's the armorer. You can say the buck stops here. But there's a lot of things that have to go wrong on this movie set for Helena Hutchins to get shot to death. Let's talk about
Not
Dave
to mention
Halls.
that they didn't even have
He's in charge of safety.
First aid.
And he also touched the gun.
And again, that can be an intervening cause as well when you have involuntary manslaughter. In other words, even though you would think if she gets shot, but if she gets shot and it's injury,
as well.
And then the lack of safety material comes on. That was something I didn't hear the defense arguing, but that was
involuntary manslaughter. I don't know if he could have been convicted of that. I don't know if they would have charged him with that. But he immediately took responsibility. He knew he messed up, big time. Mm-hmm. Who else? How about Sarah Zachary? Sarah Zachary, I mean, she got immunity in this case.
Yeah.
But then we heard her testimony. She's throwing away evidence.
That's
like,
very
trying
curious
to
to
for
me.
the, getting rid of evidence, but like, she's the one who really got rid of evidence and admitted it. I get it. Like, she panicked, whatever. She's texting, uh-oh, emergency, throw out evidence.
So why? Why did she do that?
I don't know where that live round came from. I think the jury may have been convinced that Hannah Gutierrez brought it in. Personally, beyond a reasonable doubt, I don't know where the live round came from. Beyond a reasonable doubt, I do not know. I can make a case for Hannah Gutierrez. I can make a case for Sarah and her boss, Seth Kenny.
And technically, that's reasonable.
But I don't know where it came from.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. I just don't know. Now, who else? Who else? Well, Alec Baldwin. So what does all this mean for Alec Baldwin now? Does Hannah Gutierrez's guilt help him?
No, I don't think so.
When a jury sits and has to make a decision in a case like this, they don't have choices of who to blame. They just have the person in front of them.
Hopefully he addresses that you can have multiple.
You've got a victim who died who should not have died.
In an
and those
involuntary
facts will never
manslaughter
change.
situation.
And clearly you have someone pulling the trigger who says he didn't pull the trigger, but whatever. I mean,
but the experts are going to say it haven't been
gun
pulled.
Safety protocol. Clearly, every gun expert I've had on, yeah, you don't do that. You just don't. You're not supposed to do it in the movies.
That's involuntary manslaughter.
SAG has their guidelines as well. It's in there. You don't do what he did. You don't point at someone, you don't squeeze the trigger. Period. But he didn't load the gun. He relied on others. But the question is, what does this verdict tonight mean for Alec Baldwin? Speaking of verdict, let's take you inside the courtroom for that moment.
We find the defendant, Hannah Gutierrez, guilty of involuntary manslaughter as charged in count 1. We find the defendant, Hannah Gutierrez, not guilty of tampering with evidence.
I think he's going to get convicted as well. I think the best thing for him to do right now will be to negotiate some sort of a plea bargain. Maybe
what I need to put on the record is that
figure
this
out
is your
what he'd be, if he can get something less than the max.
So I'm going to start with the gentleman in the back. Is this your verdict?
Maybe home confinement.
Ma'am, is this your verdict? Yes. Sir, is this your verdict? Yes. Sir, is this your verdict?
Because I think he's in trouble.
Sir, is
because
your verdict?
I mean, my reading of this, and everybody talks about, well, you got to know the bullet is there, but I read it to be.
Yes. Ma'am, is this your verdict?
It's a matter of handling a handgun correctly and following the protocols to ensure something doesn't happen. That there isn't somehow something, a bullet getting in there. When you're not even doing that, that's
again, she's not
reckless.
Evil. She's not an evil person. I don't even know if she should be going to prison. I don't know. This is a first offense. It's involuntary manslaughter. It's a maximum of 18 months.
I can't believe the judge would have.
I've seen cases where people are facing a lot more time.
The judge shouldn't have remanded her. That was horrible.
Get probation. I've seen it. But let's see what happens. That we haven't gotten to that point yet. Let's bring in Court TV legal correspondent
Let's listen
Kelly
to the
Crabb, live in
correspondence.
Santa Fe, New Mexico, outside the courthouse, inside the courtroom for this whole trial. Kelly, great to see you tonight. Big day. Take us inside the courtroom for that moment where this jury came back and uttered those words, guilty.
Well, good evening to you, Vinny. Very intense moment inside the courtroom. The judge asked the person that was in charge of the jury if she wanted to read the verdict, and she kind of looked at her and said, sure. And then she read the verdict: guilty on involuntary manslaughter, not guilty on tampering with evidence.
I can't believe is that Hannah Gutierrez did not react at all.
They
I mean, it was
had
just
that lesser included of negligent use of a firearm, and they were only going to get to that if they found her not guilty on involuntary manslaughter. They did not. They found her guilty, and at that moment, Hannah Gutierrez at first didn't exactly have the most noticeable reaction to that guilty verdict on involuntary manslaughter. But when she did have a reaction, it was when they ended up remanding her into custody to take her away right away. She's been free. She hasn't been behind bars in this case at all. And so when the special prosecutor, Carrie Morrissey, asked for that, which is normal from a prosecutorial standpoint, and then Jason Bowles, her defense counsel, argued against that, saying that she has not done any violations of any of the rules so far. She's appeared in court voluntarily. She should not be remanded right away. The judge said because, Vinny, this is a death case and because she has been convicted, that she will be remanded. And so at the beginning of your show, when you were talking about the sentencing, she does face a maximum of 18 months. You have to wonder, does that give us some sort of insight into where the judge might be going? Because, again, someone died in this case.
In terms of showing
the
that this was
cinematographer
done
on the movie set
because
of
the
Rust.
press coverage.
So we'll have to see what she ends up giving Hannah as the sentence. But so her reaction then when that took place, when she was remanded, you could tell that she was visibly upset about it. One of her defense attorneys, Monica, who came to the case a little bit later, she was rubbing her back, trying to console her. Her mother, Hannah Gutierrez's mother, had outbursts inside the courtroom. Couldn't believe it. I also was looking behind me to her father, Thel Reed, the famed armorer who trained his daughter, and his mouth was wide open along with another gentleman that was by him. They couldn't believe it. They were in disbelief. I talked with Thel Reed afterwards. He told me that this is just a travesty. This is an injustice. And the mother, the outburst in the courtroom, she was saying a lot of things, especially to Special Prosecutor Carrie Morrissey as she walked out of the courtroom. And she was told that she had to keep it down and then eventually leave the courtroom. But this is already after most of the people had already left. Vinny, I also want to note that Seth Kenney, a name we've heard a lot of in this case, the man who provided a lot of the ammunition on the movie set of Rust, he was inside that courtroom for the verdict as well. I saw him standing there afterwards. Not really too much of a reaction on his face, but it seemed maybe a sense of relief from him.
And, you know, I was talking about this off the top. Like, she was put in this position, it seems, by her father who trained her and by Seth Kenney. It seems like the combination of these two guys got her the gigs and got her started here. And, I mean, from everything we heard, she wasn't ready.
No, she
wasn't ready.
No, she was not.
You know, I generally don't feel bad. I feel bad for Helena Hutchins, her family, her child. I mean, that's the tragedy here, because she should be alive today, right? She should absolutely be alive. But I look at all the people that I feel like contributed to this moment by getting an armor on the set of a movie who wasn't ready for that. Like, to me, that's another part of tragedy.
I hope in the civil suits that are filed against everyone that they make everybody
clearly is going to do some time now. They may do time, even more time after her sentencing as a result of all this.
That she was even put in the position she was.
How about afterwards? Did anyone speak? Who was talking on microphone?
Yes, several people did speak, Vinny, and one of the things I also want to note is the jurors did have a question in this case, and they asked about intervening cause. So this was part of their jury instructions. And so at that moment when they asked about this, they wanted some clarification on intervening cause.
Yes, he did. I agree.
And the judge said it's all in your instructions. So she did not provide any further clarification. But at that point, there was a part of me that thought, okay, they are looking at this, that there was this intervening cause. Of course, defense counsel was saying that Alec Baldwin, he is the one that pulled the trigger.
That's the most complicated part about an involuntary manslaughter case.
Gutierrez did not know that Alec Baldwin was going to do this, that this was not foreseeable. So we did talk with Jason Bowles afterwards. He, of course, was disappointed
and they didn't
in
understand
this verdict.
It's the same thing that happened to Jennifer Crumbley. And that's why it's so important.
So let's play the
in my opinion, the defense attorneys start out talking the law and talking the law to make sure they understand it.
The key piece of evidence that solidified your decision today?
Pretty much not checking the weapons. Just handing them over and like, here. Not checking. I mean, that was a big deal. I mean, you can't do that. And if you have live rounds there, and you don't even know it, and you're not checking them, there's a problem.
Was everyone pretty much unanimous? Anyone push back?
Not really. We had little differences, but about 2%.
And why not guilty on the cocaine?
We didn't just think it was necessary. wasn't something that
Was there
mattered.
not enough, you know?
Yeah, there was nothing there. There was just like, give it to somebody. Who knows? Could have been anything. So,
What's your name?
Albert Sanchez.
ALBERTSANCHEZ?
Yeah.
Okay, how do you feel walking out of court right now? It's been 2.5 weeks. It's been a really long process.
I don't know. Just in and out. I feel all right. Yeah, but I'm going to go.
All right, Albert, thank you.
Thanks.
So it's always great to get jurors' insight after the verdict is reached. And then we also did join in on a news conference with defense counsel Jason Bowles, who said he is going to appeal. Let's listen to some of that news conference now.
We're obviously disappointed in the verdict, but we are disappointed in a lot of things that happened in that courtroom. We plan to appeal. We believe we've got a number of issues.
But see, the issue is she's got to get released on bond if there are legitimate issues, and that's why this judge made a
have a lot of work to do, and we will be doing on this appeal.
Under the
circumstances
of this case, this isn't a violent case.
And it was a lot.
This isn't a violent death. I mean, it is violent from the standpoint of guns, but this is an accident. So you're not protecting society when she's not on a movie set anymore. So she should have been released on bond.
I think everybody saw what happened in that courtroom, and we'll be addressing it.
For which lab, Cam?
And of course, Vinny, as you could tell from that news conference, Jason Bowles not very happy with the verdict, glad about the verdict on the tampering with the evidence. And he, remember, Carrie Morrissey, the special prosecutor, had wanted some kind of, added language or getting away from some language on that last charge of tampering with the evidence, not to specifically say that it was cocaine, but the judge left that in there. And the jurors, as you heard Mr. Sanchez say earlier, that he just kind of felt that was overkill, that wasn't necessary to find her guilty on that, because we really didn't know what was in those baggies.
We didn't know. I mean, the only evidence that was tampered with was by someone who threw away some of the rounds, and we heard that testimony, and that person's not being prosecuted. So, and the jury was very logical. I mean, this jury very logical, right? Didn't check the guns. I mean, it literally is that simple. Like, you check the guns every time before you hand it to an actor, and then you get it back, and then you get rid of everything that's in there.
What?
And then when you load it again, you check it. And then before you hand it, you check it. That should have not been allowed. I mean, I wouldn't think, but I guess, a lot of times when you have conflicts like that, they ask them simply, do you think you can be fair and impartial? Not just, oh, yeah, it's okay. No, check it in front of me. That's what a responsible actor would do, and SAG guidelines call for that as well.
Yeah.
The guidelines.
But see, that's the thing. She didn't check the guns, and in my opinion, that is enough to get her to where we're at. But maybe not. I mean, maybe the intervening calls
Let's talk about those closing arguments, because that's really where they.
An intervening calls would be someone intentionally introducing a live round in, but it still doesn't mitigate the fact that she should have done her job, and that's going to be confusing for a jury.
The person's guilty or not guilty. What about those arguments today?
All right, let's see here. See what she says.
And Vinny, one of the things that Jason Bowles' defense counsel argued was that Hannah Gutierrez should have been able to rely on the production team at Rust, that there was not live ammunition on the set, regardless of who you want to say.
So then why would she need to do the safety
now,
then?
how that sat with the jury, clearly they found her guilty of involuntary manslaughter. But that was one of the things that he argued, that the OSHA report that was given, the violations on the movie set of Rust, the fine of the producers here, and how OSHA found that the management, Rust production team, was responsible, not Hannah Gutierrez. And he talked a lot about foreseeability, how Alec Baldwin pulled an audible. And that's what he said. He said she had no idea that he was going to pull out the gun and pull that trigger, even though, of course, as we've talked about numerous times, Alec Baldwin has said that he didn't do so.
But
Karen
she
Morrissey
should have been in that room with the gun. She
how
shouldn't have left the gun
Gutierrez
there. That's
just had
another
this
problem.
lack of safety protocols when it came to the guns and all the weapons on set. And she even said, which I thought was quite powerful, that even if Hannah Gutierrez would have been inside that church, she would not have performed the safety check. So defense counsel was arguing that Hannah wasn't even inside the church. She didn't know what Alec Baldwin was going to do. She handed the gun to Dave Hulse. And Carrie Morrissey said, if she was in the church, we'd still be here today. This still would have happened. Let's listen to some of the closing arguments. Also, I want to say Alec Baldwin was mentioned a lot. Let's listen.
The astonishing
lack of diligence with regard to gun safety is, without question, a significant cause of the death of Helena Hutchins. Did Mr. Baldwin also contribute when he pointed the gun at people and pulled the hammer back, and regardless of what he said to George Stephanopoulos, pulled the trigger? Yes, he is. And again, we'll deal with that another time.
You probably remember that. That was the scene where Mr. Baldwin runs up the hill and cut is yelled. And right after cut is yelled, he shoots. That's, I submit, reasonable doubt, and I'll tell you why. Because Mr. Baldwin went off script. He chose to fire after cut was called. And you're going to see where he does later do the same thing in this tragic shooting. Mamie Mitchell told you on the stand, the script supervisor, that it was not in the script for Mr. Baldwin to point the weapon. It was not in the script for him to point the weapon. And we have to be very careful with facts when we're considering a criminal case and the beyond the reasonable doubt standard. That's extremely important because Ms. Gutierrez-Reed.
See, I think the fact that what he ignores is the fact that she had a
knew
duty.
That Mr. Baldwin in that moment
she had a duty.
Was going to point the weapon.
I haven't seen
right
the
at
New Mexico law, but I believe she had a duty
and do what he
do
did.
her job and protect. So therefore, Alec Baldwin couldn't have intervened with that.
As a scapegoat.
Yeah, and this is what the state
Mr.
argues.
Halls
so
was charged criminally. To his credit, he took an early plea and he got the benefit of that. Mr. Baldwin has now been indicted. Everyone with criminal culpability has been criminally charged in this case. She's not being scapegoated.
Except for Sarah,
she is being
who got
treated
immunity.
Like everyone else. She is not being given a break because she's a woman. She is not being given a break because she's young.
And the name Sarah Zachary came up a lot, Vinny, in Jason Bull's closing argument, saying that, again, she threw those dummy rounds away, talked with Seth Kenney afterwards, put up that emoji of the hand over the mouth that we've talked about before on this show, and talked about Seth Kenney and how he's the supplier of ammunition, but it obviously was not enough for the jurors to find her not guilty.
Kelly Craft live in Santa Fe tonight. Great job on this trial. Awesome reporting. And hopefully you get a couple days off before you're back on the air again. But we shall see. I'm sure you'll be off somewhere. Thanks so much, Kelly.
Thanks, Vinny.
All right, folks. When we come back, we're going to talk about what this all means for Alec Baldwin. Everything we learned in this trial, everything we saw, how will it impact his trial coming up in July? Plus, coming up next hour. In Kissimmee, Florida, the tragic murder of 13-year-old Madeline Soto. She vanished when her mother's boyfriend took her to school. Then she was found murdered days later. That boyfriend is in custody, charged with sexual assault connected to images found on his phone. Tonight, shocking new details about when the sex abuse began.
We have evidence that...
All right, so wanted to watch that, like I said, watch some of that and react to it and have some discussion. And, you know, in regards to the trial there. So let's see here. Let me, so one interesting thing there, Cam, I'm going to come back to this if you're still in the chat there. The juror drives the truck for life. That's crazy to me. I mean, in this case, obviously that might be one of the things the attorney wanted to bring up here. But again, what still resonates with me with Hannah's case is the fact that I still believe, and this is what the state argued, and I'm with them on the argument. I believe she had a duty as armor, whether or not she was inexperienced, whether or not she should have been there, whether or not this should have happened. She had a duty to protect. She had a duty to do her job. And I don't believe that Alec Baldwin intervened in that. In other words, what I'm trying to say is even if people, and this is part of what I think, again, should have maybe made Seth Kenny culpable, legally culpable, criminally culpable, along with Sarah Kenny, and that, or Sarah, whatever her last name was. I know it's Seth Kenny. It's not Sarah Kenny, but Sarah, whatever her last name was. But both of them, in my opinion, from what I could see here, is I could see a scenario happening where they were wanting to take advantage, where they were wanting to essentially get her fired because she wasn't a responsible armorer, and this backfired on them. Now, potentially, there's a legal case to be made, and I guess it really comes up to a jury on whether or not they want to view it as an intervening cause or they want to view this separate, and what the law of New Mexico says as far as viewing the position that Hannah was in, and that is that she had a duty to protect everyone on that set from the firearms on that set, and she failed in that duty and was negligent in that duty, and it was out of that negligence that the live round was allowed to be fired and then ultimately killed Helena Hutchins. So it is, to me, that is what makes this, that is why I believe she's guilty, and I don't believe there's a problem with the verdict. But obviously, there's a lot of other factors that are going on, which are distracting at times in cases like these. And it is a very difficult case. It's very difficult when you're dealing with the nuance of involuntary manslaughter because of the fact of how you apply an intervening cause, and whether something is an intervening cause or it's not. And a jury gets to decide that. And in this case, the jury just simply said that we don't believe it. And that's okay. And that's okay. That's why we have jury trials. So let's move out of the video room here. Give me a moment here. All right. And let's talk, right? We're gonna wrap this up here because we've been going now for an hour and 25 minutes. It's now 3:00. We went through daylight savings time, shot ahead. It's now 3 a.m. where I'm at. I'm not sure where it is where you're at. I appreciate the 4 people that are hanging out with me right now. Like I said, I need to do this a lot earlier so that we can get hopefully a few more people in, ready to talk, ready to discuss these things. We're not going to watch anything on James Crumbley, but I wanted to say a few words about what happened in the James Crumbley case this week. Obviously, we just covered more coverage on the Russ case because that was the last case we covered. But James Crumbley case, where do I think that's at? I really believe, and I've been reflecting on it and thinking about it today, I think the defense is off to a great start. I am very happy to see that because I believe that, I was so disturbed by how the Jennifer Crumbley case ended, but I really strongly believe in that case that the way the state has charged this case is incorrect. I don't like the way the prosecution's handled the case. I don't like how they've handled their evidence. I don't like what they've done with it at all. I had a question in a previous live, but during when we were watching the Lee case, and it was in regards to why is there a lack of cross-examination going on, and the answer to that is because we haven't got to the witnesses that are going to be cross-examined yet. These witnesses that are coming in, which there's still going to be a few more. That will be here, I'm sure, on Monday and Tuesday. But these witnesses that are testifying as to what happened in the school and telling their story, they really belong at the sentencing hearing, if anything. They don't belong, if there is going to be one, they don't belong in the trial because, again, this case is all about what happened before. Now, if I was the defense attorney, I would be standing up there and asking each one of them and saying, you were not present. You don't have any knowledge as to what was going on prior to this. You have no knowledge. You're stating simply that you have no knowledge about what James Crumbley knew or didn't know, correct? You have no knowledge as to whether or not Ethan Crumbley discussed his mental health issues with his parents. You have no idea as to what was your opinion of Ethan Crumbley? Did you think he had many mental health problems? I would be asking him some questions, right? I mean, they're putting these witnesses on the stand. Give us your reflection on what you thought about Ethan Crumbley prior to shooting. Prior to the shooting. I mean, they're on the stand, and I guarantee you, each and every one of those people would say, "I never saw it coming." As a result, again, that hones into the jury. So I think, I know the defense is taking the respectful tone, and these people are victims, but they're up on the stand. The state has chose to put them on. They've chose to come in and tell their story. I believe that should be allowed to be asked. And if the state wants to object and Mr. Keith wants to get upset and the judge wants to block him, let him block him. And it just shows all the more the way the state is trying to maneuver this case. And again, I think if you should be watching, it's in the Tyrone Tucker case, you're watching how the prosecutors have attempted to manipulate the case and the evidence in order to make it look like they have a stronger case than they do. In this case, they're doing the same thing. They're manipulating the evidence. They're using evidence in certain ways, and then they're turning around and putting things in front of the jury that are meant for one purpose: to inflame the jury, get them upset, and then they're planning to go in and argue to the jury, argue to an upset, inflamed jury that, hey, look, somebody needs to be held accountable. Now, the thing is, I like James Crumbley's attorney so far. I think she's doing a great job. I think she's much more prepared, and I think she has absolutely gotten across very well to this jury on how, I think she's gotten across to the jury her points very well, and really is pounding home the idea that James Crumbley didn't have knowledge of his son's mental health. I look forward to seeing how she handles those counselors and the goofy bunch, that the two guys that themselves didn't ask or require he be taken out of the school. And then these guys are walking free. These guys are not being held accountable, while they're holding the parents accountable for allegedly, supposedly having to overrule these school people who didn't require he leave, who never made the request that he leave. That's the thing. They never made the request that they take him out, and they acknowledge that. And I said I wasn't going to play any video in this section, but I feel inclined. I want to show one thing. So we're going to go back into the video room here. Give me a moment. Bear with me. Give me just a small indulgence here, and then we're going to move on and talk about about the Tucker case, because that's coming up on Monday, and what we're going to be doing hopefully tomorrow night on that. So some things on that. So give me one moment. All right, I'm back. All right, so let me roll through here. I kind of just decided I want to play this. It's my own footage, but I got to find the area in the footage. Hold on.
We had testimony. And you weren't in the at that.
Hey, correct.
That he went to the Meyer and saw cars. Tried to get to the high school.
All right. I found the area I want to go. So it's going to switch. Unfortunately, it just kind of jumps in because there was like an issue with the stream, and then it just jumps right into his cross-examination. But I want you to listen to the cross-examination here of this detective and how effective, just the difference of how this sounds in relationship to what we got in the Jennifer Crumbley case. And I probably should have I should have been maybe a little more prepared for this segment, but it just came to mind. I wanted to do this and demonstrate this, but I really thought she did a really good job here. Let's listen.
He told you that he had been in town, correct?
Yes.
That he saw the police cars?
Yes.
Many police cars. That he tried to get to the high school?
Correct.
That he couldn't get there?
Correct.
That he went to the Meyer and saw all the students?
Yes.
and that he was trying to get a hold of his son.
Yes.
And he specifically said he was trying to get a hold of his son to see if his son was okay.
Correct.
Sounds like a father that cares
He
about
then
the
at
son,
some
right?
point told his wife about what happened at the
I
school
love what
shooting
she's
at
doing
the
here.
school.
Yes.
At about 5 minutes and 18 seconds of the interview, James was very clear that they didn't have issues with their son.
Yes.
That he didn't believe that they had been having issues with their son. Is that fair to say?
That's what he said, yes, ma'am.
He talked about the fact that his friend
Notice how
had been sent
uncomfortable
away.
he starts to get.
And let
She's
me
doing
clarify.
a really, really good job
James
here.
talked about the fact that his son's friend had been sent away.
Yes, I know what you're saying.
Okay. And that their dog died.
Yes.
James's mother passed away that April.
Yes.
At 6 minutes and 24 seconds, you were looking at the math homework on Jennifer Crumbley's phone, and I believe it was you that said, did anyone ask him about this?
Now, I want you to understand, why is what she just questioned significant, right? This is important because it explains why James Crumbley would be observing things in his son, right? And wouldn't be thinking this is signs of school shooting. This is just signs that, any child, anybody, any young individual who's lost a grandparent, who's lost someone important to them, may very well start to struggle a little bit when those things are going on. Now, maybe they could have got him into some counseling or whatever to help him with the death of the grandma, but not necessarily, right? I mean, most of the time you're not getting your kid into counseling for those things. But what she's expertly suggesting is those messages that the state believes were signs of mental illness were actually at the time that the grandmother passed away. So, and this is what she's getting in before the jury, which is a heck of a lot clearer than what Shannon Smith did as she befuddled herself through this case. Put herself on display instead of her points. And she's making a very valid point here that at the time of those messages, 7 months before, it was right after his mother passed away, or the grandmother passed away. So therefore, when you hear them talking about, almost thought you had to give him a Xanax, he's freaking out, he sleeps in the room, he's telling them all this stuff, he's in chaos. They're believing it's about that. And then life goes on. And there's no other instances. She's gearing up. I guarantee you, I might be wrong, but I guarantee you, in closing argument, she just flipped this witness, and she's going to argue to the jury that that's what that was about. That's why it wasn't something they thought about when they were in that room. That's why it wasn't something that stood out to them, that it had nothing to do with that fact that you would assume that their child was, that his son was a homicidal maniac. And then the idea, furthermore, as you're going to hear here, she advances further. Again, this is just extremely important to me. And this just stood out to me when I was watching it. It stood out to me. The fact that you're not going to make the case that this guy doesn't care about his kid, right? That this father who's racing home, who's devastated, who's trying to cover up his son confessing to the crime, that you're going to think that if he thought his son was on the verge of a school shooting, that he's just going to go, oh, cool, no problem. Let it happen. Let me give him the gun. No, obviously, no, that's not at all. That makes no sense. She is undercutting the state's case, which is why I believe the state is not in a good position right now. They are not in a position of power like they were in the Jennifer Crumbley case, namely because Shannon Smith was a mess. She was disorganized. She then proceeded to allow in evidence that she had fought during months of pretrial hearings to keep out, which was the affair information, and then decided she was going to take the approach to say, oh, they're bullying my client. Look, good, bring it all in, because it's ridiculous to suggest. Well, the problem is you just made your client unlikable. You're unlikable. You're not bonding with the jury. You're not in any position to argue. And it was a mess. And that jury got back there and said, oh, well, didn't even understand the law. I have a feeling this attorney is going to end with a different result. Let's continue listening because, like I said, it gets better.
I believe specifically the bullet holes.
Correct.
That's what you're referring to.
Yes, I am. Yes. And I was going to say that. And I was going to say specifically the bullet holes, or what appear to be bullet holes, on the figure that's drawn on the math homework.
Yes, ma'am.
And Jennifer responded no.
Right.
And then she kind of talked about the counselor, and there was a brief discussion about the counselor, and you wouldn't know what happened with the counselor, correct?
I do not.
Okay. At 6 minutes and 35 seconds, there was a statement that their son was a perfect kid.
Yes,
In their eyes, he was a perfect kid.
that's what they said.
At 6 minutes and 45 seconds, James told you that he had a 6-hour handgun.
Yes,
That was, at 6 minutes and 50 seconds, he said that it was hidden in an armoire in a case.
correct.
At 6 minutes and 58 seconds, and these are approximate timestamps, so I'm not holding you to them,
I
Detective.
really appreciate it.
6 minutes and 58 seconds, that the bullets were hidden in a different spot under jeans, he says.
Yes, ma'am.
At that, it was shortly after that discussion that James indicated that they would like a lawyer present, and it was understood that it was for their son.
That's what my interpretation of what he said was, yes.
And we see that in the video. You, in fact, advised his son later in the video that that James and his wife want to hire an attorney retain an attorney for their son.
Yes,
Okay. And James continued to talk to you.
he did.
Jennifer explained that at the school advised that their son could stay at school or go home, but that they both indicated they wish they would have taken him home that day. If you recall.
I don't recall. I remember her saying it. I don't remember. There was over talking.
And we saw that. There was over talking a couple of times. James told you that he didn't have any trouble with his son, correct?
Correct.
In fact, you or your partner asked that. Have you ever had any trouble with him? Has he ever gotten in trouble? And James said no. He had mediocre grades, right?
Yes.
They were up and down. James or his wife indicated that they'd found out the night before that he had an E in geometry,
Yes.
and there was an argument about it that night.
Yes.
They had gotten on about his grades.
Yes.
At about 11 minutes and 17 seconds, and you weren't in the room, but you did see the video, your former partner, now retired partner, indicated that, reassured James that his son was going to be okay.
Yes.
That he was going to be safe.
Correct.
Obviously, you can see from that conversation that James was concerned about his son.
Yes, he was.
And the safety of his son, and the well-being of his son.
Correct.
Your now retired partner also said that it was going to get worse before it got better.
Yes.
Meaning the situation that they were discussing on November 30th at approximately 2:58 p.m.
Correct.
1:58 p.m. Thank you.
Yep.
At about 12 minutes and 5 seconds of the video, James indicates that his son was just fine that morning.
Yes.
That he had talked to him.
Yes.
That they had talked about the grades issue.
Correct.
That James told his son, "We just want you to try."
Correct.
There was no indication that James had any concern about his son's well-being that morning, that he hadn't exhibited any signs that there was anything wrong. In fact, he had spoken with him and reassured him, correct?
That's what he told us, yes. I wasn't
Right.
there, obviously.
And you weren't there for the conversation, but in the moment during this interview, that was your understanding, that there had been this conversation, that there were no concerns based on that conversation.
Correct.
At about 12 minutes and 48 seconds, either you or your partner asked if James's son was active on social media, and he said no.
Correct. Yes. Like on Facebook, but she jumped in and said Instagram, I think.
Correct. So James's wife was aware that their son was active on social media or Instagram, but James clearly was not aware of that.
I don't remember.
Okay. At approximately 13 minutes and 45 seconds, there was some over talking, but there was a discussion about empty magazines.
Yes.
And specifically, either yourself or your partner asked how many magazines there were in the house.
Yes.
And the magazines were referring to the magazines that go into the firearm.
That's correct.
Which is what holds the bullets.
Yes, ma'am.
And James indicated that there were 3 magazines.
Yes.
That they were all empty.
Yes.
That they were stored empty.
Yes.
That the gun was stored empty.
Correct.
That the ammunition was stored separately.
Yes.
And then there was additional conversation between James and his wife about ammunition.
Yes.
There was a question about how much ammunition was in the house.
That's correct.
And at about 13 minutes and 54 seconds, James indicates to his wife, you bought the ammunition when you guys went to the shooting range.
Yes.
And you understood that to mean that James's wife and their son bought ammunition when they went to the shooting range at some date prior to November 30th.
Well, hold on a second, Judge. The video and the statements of James Crumbley and Jennifer Crumbley speak for themselves. His impression of what their statements are, that's an improper question. That's why we'll have a transcript from it.
Yeah, that would cause him to speculate his impression of what they said. Is that true?
What they meant.
What he understood, the statement, you bought them when you went to the gun range, what that meant. I mean, I think it's pretty clear, but I can move on.
It's the video. It's a video, Judge.
Guy's such a jerk. I can't stand Keith.
There was,
I cannot
Jennifer
stand that
Crumbley
guy.
also indicated
really
that going to the
cannot.
gun range was a hobby that James and his
When
son
he
did
speaks, he pisses me off. Just doesn't matter what he says.
At about 17 minutes and 32 seconds, James and his wife, yourself, and your partner leave that first interview room, and this is, and walk into the second interview room where their son is handcuffed to the wall.
Yes.
You advised their son that James and his wife wanted to retain him an attorney. At 19 minutes, it was a fairly short interaction from what we can see on the video, correct?
Extremely.
And at 19 minutes and 2 seconds, as James and his wife are leaving, James repeatedly tells his son that he loves him.
Yes, he does.
And he says it over and over. I think I counted 4 or 5 times.
Yes.
At 19 minutes and 18 seconds of the video, we switch back to the first interview room where James and Jennifer, yourself and your partner, are walking into that room. And James enters the room, and you can see on the video, he's obviously crying.
Correct.
Very loudly.
Yes.
It could be described as sobbing.
One could characterize it as that. Yes, ma'am.
He's clearly incredibly emotional.
Yes.
Shortly after that, James asks about his son's whereabouts and if he will be made aware of where his son is going to be.
Yes.
Again, it appeared that he was concerned about his son and if his son was going to be okay.
Again, that's speculation, Judge.
Well, you know, his statements speak for themselves. I don't think he needs to be interpreting them with any speculation.
You've done many police interviews
I have.
in your career. You've been a law enforcement officer for 29 years.
Yes, ma'am.
You've been a detective for much of that 29 years.
Yes, ma'am.
Would you agree that James learning that his son was the shooter appeared to be very unexpected to him?
Objection to that question, obviously, Judge. That is blanket speculation.
Keith absolutely did not want an answer to that. But that is excellent job. I mean, by the defense attorney. I mean, that is exactly what she should be doing.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Real quick, Sergeant, let's talk about what James Crumbley didn't tell you. He never told you that he bought the murder weapon 4 days ago, did he?
He did not.
He never said he bought the murder weapon 4 days ago as a gift for his son.
He did not.
He never told you the gun was ever locked up, did he?
He did not.
He never told you the counselor told James and Jennifer Crumbley to take their son home that day.
Which the counselor did not
In fact, he referred to it as doodling
do
on
that.
paper, right?
Correct.
He never actually mentioned that he actually had another
But
son, too.
that is not what the counselor testified to in the Jennifer
In
Crumbley
that
case.
portion of the video where he said, I love you, I love you, I love you, what was his son doing at that time?
Trying to talk to his mom.
Okay, and his
Now
son
look,
was actually
this
saying,
idiot. Okay,
I
we'll
did
talk
it
about
at
this
that
one.
point.
He did.
So James was yelling, I love you, I love you, I love you, louder, louder, and louder, over his son.
Your Honor, I don't know what the implication is that the prosecution is trying to make, but I don't think that's even a proper question.
Counsel clearly tried to paint a picture that he was saying, I love you to his son, and the video depicts something else, so I would like some context.
Okay,
Your Honor,
well,
I think-
whether or not he was trying to talk over his son is up to the jury
That's
to
fine.
determine. He's able to say, was he saying it at the same contemporaneous with his son saying, I did it, and in his opinion, did it get louder? But why he was saying it is up to the jury.
That's fair, Judge, thank you. Did he say it at the same time his son was confessing to a crime?
He was.
Okay, and did his voice elevate, get louder?
It did.
Okay. Now, they didn't retain him an attorney, though, did they?
Not that I have no knowledge of, no. They
Okay.
did not.
And James Crumbley actually did say to stop questioning, too.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Nothing further.
Anything?
No, Your Honor.
You can step out of your excuse.
All right, thank you, Your Honor.
Who's next, please?
So let's talk about that, right? And why that is so important. Number one, you just saw an expert cross-examination. She spoke her, she literally, what she did is that was obviously a hard to hear video. She took him through that entire video and had the jury understand it was a narrative. If you sat and listened to it, besides when Mr. Keith jumped in and interrupted her, she was telling the story she wanted to be told, right? A story of a concerned, caring parent. Then Mr. Keith, who I don't know if I'd want him as my parent, apparently decides, let me make the point to the jury how much he cares about his son, right? This idiot thinks that, oh, he's trying to cover up his son's crime. That's somehow going to be disturbing to the jury. No. He was attempting, because he loved his son, that at the moment that his son was saying, I did it, his dad jumps in and starts saying loudly, knowing it's being recorded, starts loudly shouting, I love you, I love you, I love you, demonstrating not that he's some uncaring parent who doesn't care about the future of his kid or doesn't care about the actions of his kid, but demonstrating that he absolutely loves his son to the point that he doesn't want his son's words to be recorded. Even though he knows his son has just shot kids and done a heinous thing, he still loves his son that much. He, of course, we didn't see the end of it, but I have it up on the channel, and it's also aired during the Jennifer Crumbley case, where the one person that's crying, audibly sobbing, is James Crumbley. And James Crumbley is pulling up to the school, talking to him. You can tell there is no indication in his mind that his son is about to go do a mass shooting that day, or that that's even a possibility. And then Mr. Keith wants to say, well, did you know that he mentioned that he bought the weapon 4 days for him? Well, no, because he didn't. I'm sure he was maybe not thinking that was something he wanted to get into with the police at that time. But the bottom line was, he didn't buy it for him to go do that. He didn't buy it for him thinking that was ever going to happen. It was something that he and his son did. It was a way for him to bond with his son. And he never dreamed in a million years that Ethan was ever going to do what he did. And the one person that seems to be genuinely, truly devastated by all of this between the two of them was him, because he seemed to be the closest. Jennifer obviously attempted to be close with her son, but it was father and son that would go out and do things. You could tell the father had more of a connection with Ethan, or felt he did, to talk with him about things. I think the mom was probably more of the louder disciplinarian, and it seemed like the dad on the way to school was trying to smooth this thing out and say, listen, I know you're upset, I know you're mad that you're getting your video games taken away, but we took your phone away, we're taking some privileges away, but listen, just get good grades, get your grades up, we're doing this out of love. There again, the night before, that's what we have to understand here. You've got parents that are approaching their kid about his grades. Yet these are supposedly uncaring parents. It makes no freaking sense. And how Shannon Smith couldn't get this across to a jury, okay? And then have them understand that all of that leads to reasonable doubt in regards to the foreseeability aspect, that you can't get to Damascus. My dad used to always say that was in his closing arguments, the road to Damascus. It's long, it's road. He used to tell his clients, he said, we come in there, he said, Damascus is resolving the case in your favor. There's 100 different roads, and we're going to find one, but we're going to ultimately find the road to Damascus if you hire me and we get there. But that's the thing. She had 100. She needed to. How she didn't do this, how she didn't argue these things. There's reasonable doubt all over this case. But the only way the state gets the conviction, or in there Damascus in this case, the only way it happens is if the jury has to find that it was foreseeable, regardless of whether it's the storage of the weapon, whether it's the failure to care because they have a duty of care to those kids. But they had to believe it was foreseeable. They had to think that he was going to do this, and that an ordinary person would believe, based on the facts of circumstances and the things they saw, would have said, yes, I believe my son's about to commit a mass murder. And that's what was required. And there's no way, when you look at this case, when you consider that cross-examination, the facts that she just put in there, what she can argue, and if she goes in and she closes this thing right, she's going to get a not guilty. She's going to beat the case. And it's because she's coming in professionally. She's coming in with her strong. She's doing a heck of a job when she does cross-examine. And we'll see what kind of case they put on. I don't know what kind of case they're going to put on. But in a case like this, it just requires the jury to understand the law and to just simply apply the law correctly. That's it. And not make the case about your own ineptitudes as a lawyer or unpreparedness, and then try to say, well, you're trying to punish her because she wasn't a good parent, and you don't punish me because I'm not because I'm scatterbrained attorney. You don't have to like me, but just because I'm a scatterbrained attorney or a bad parent, or I don't do that. Like, no, that fell short. Because what you need to make them understand is first of all, they didn't respect you. I'm talking about Shannon Smith in this case. And I'm not saying she has a good reputation. She has a good history. But they didn't believe in her. And in this case, the jury must trust. In most cases, the jury has to trust the attorney. They have to believe you're competent, so that when you speak to them and you explain to them how to apply the law, and you explain to them how to deliberate and take the facts and the evidence in the case and interpret them, that you will then, that they're going to believe in you and what you're telling them, and that they're going to take you as competent, not Mr. Keast and Miss McDonald, okay, who are sitting there trying to twist and turn, who are sitting there lying to this jury by telling them that Ethan Crumbley has mental problems, when he turned around and told a judge that he had no mental problems and that he's just an evil, diabolical guy who can fool parole boards and fool in it. There's, no trained doctor. Nobody will be. He's so diabolical and so dastardly that nobody can assess him correctly. Yet his parents supposedly could. But that's only because it's convenient, because they want to lock the parents up for, 60 years, but I guess it'll be 15 years max because I think everything will run concurrent. It's ridiculous. And that's what really just burns me up about this case, because of how they're presenting it. Let me know how you feel. All right, let's jump back out of the video room. Give me a moment here. And all right, so that's what I wanted to talk about with the Crumbley case. I wanted to show that. I wanted to talk about that, but I decided, let's watch the cross-examination, because I just think that really brings it home to me and is an example. And anybody, I know that had a question about the cross-examination, it came into mind and said, yes, she's cross-examining the witnesses that need to be cross-examined. Do I think there's questions that could be asked? Yes, she's making a strategic move not to fall out of favor with the jurors or look like a bully with these people. I still think, this is one of the things that Mr. Tucker needs to understand with his case is when you cross-examine a witness, as my dad has talked to me about, and when we've talked about proper cross-examination, one of the effective things you can do is you should tell a story, right? You include the answer to the question in the question, and it's yes or no, and it's moving rapidly through it. Boom, boom, boom. Isn't this true? Is this true? And even if you anticipate they might say no, you're going to be talking to the jury through your cross-examination. And that's what he needs to be doing with some of these witnesses. And for him, he can do it improperly and get away with it. I mean, that's my understanding of why he was doing this. So that's what he needs to be doing, because if he can get away with it, and he doesn't have to worry about the consequences of not following. My God, I messed myself up here. About following, protocol or the correct the correct decorum in a courtroom, right? And he doesn't have to worry about being held accountable for that because there's no state bar, there's no bar complaints that can be filed or anything of that nature. He can go through and start asking stuff and getting things in front of the jury and press forward. Isn't it true? Isn't it true that you did this? Isn't it true that you knew this? Load up those questions. And I'd have thought Jerome and Cara Higgins, if they're helping him, would have been helping him prepare the questions for all those witnesses. And he just jumps up and just goes buck wild on them. And yeah, the judge may say, "Oh, Mr. But again, one key giveaway was they didn't want a mistrial. So he had carte blanche ability to just go right in and just do whatever the hell he wanted. And worst case scenario, he gets a mistrial. He's out on bail. He made a mistake. He's not trained a lawyer. Right? They're going to ask for sidebars. That's fine. Ask for a sidebar. We'll come up and the judge will say whatever he says and he'll say, "All right, I'll do my best, judge." And he comes up and he asks the next question. The judge comes up. And the thing is, he's going to get information to the jury. And that's what she was doing. She was basically getting her version of what she saw on that video and making sure that parts that were hard to hear because it's on the video and he was there, she used that witness to be able to tell the story of that interrogation again in a favorable light to her client. Now, what I believe we're now moving on and transitioning to Mr. Tucker. His case, as you know, he has a status hearing. I don't believe there's going to be any ability to cover it live, from my understanding. It's a phone. He'll be attending via phone. Obviously, if I find the feed, I'll be looking for it. I'm going to see if he knows if it's going to be covered on any of the TV networks. It probably is not. I think it's more of a perfunctory, just, hey, this is it. He gets to introduce himself to the judge. I don't anticipate, to my knowledge, there being any major rulings being made, but there could be. There could be a ruling made on the gag order. There could be a ruling made on some of his motions, although normally in status conferences like this, it's more so if there's something that can be taken up that's merely just, maybe the transcript motion, something like that, the judge may go ahead and say it's granted, where are we at on this? But something like the amending his pre-trial release, that's going to require a hearing. They're going to set a hearing date, determine if Mr. Tucker will need to be present for it. And then, of course, he's got the motion to dismiss that he's going to be filing. So I don't anticipate that unless this judge jumps in there and says, Mr. Tucker, you have this deadline to file this motion, which he could do. And this is when trial is, and he can do that. And it may disrupt some of what Mr. Tucker plans unless he gets the motion to dismiss filed, regardless of having the transcript, because the judge can require that. He could set it on. He could set it up. Let's see here. Oh, Dolores, welcome. Late to this one, but good to see you. Yes, I know. I'm sorry, Dolores. It's obviously a late one with the time change. I jumped on late. We've been going. I wasn't even anticipating to be on for 2 hours, but we got into some stuff. So check out the entirety of the broadcast. We covered a lot of good stuff here. We covered some verdicts you might not be aware of. Some you have. We got into Hannah Gutierrez. We just got into James Crumbley, and then now we're talking about Tucker, because tomorrow, that's what I'm kind of transitioning to in preparation here, in case they decide to address the gag order and everything like that. I've been trying to, again, some of you may not be aware, some of you that have been around or watched the last few episodes of Justice Watch Live, particularly if you go back and you watch Justice episode 4, you're going to hear a lot of background on what's been going on. But I lost my dad recently, and unfortunately, he was to play, or originally anticipated to play, a large, a big part in the channel of coming on and talking about cases. I've got his funeral coming up on the 16th, so I've been just dealing with a lot of stuff in regards to that. So I just haven't had time to sit down and put forth a video, but I want to talk about the gag order with you guys. I want to go over documents that I have. I want to start doing stuff. So what I'm going to do is, in lieu of doing an official Justice Watch episode, what we're going to do is we are going to just go ahead. I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and do a live and make this, just do this as a live, and we'll just do it live. It's not going to be as clean as I would like, but I'll jump around. We'll discuss things. We'll answer questions, and come ready to go. We're going to go through each of these documents. I don't anticipate this discussion. It's probably about 10 documents deep. But what we're going to do is I'm going to take you through my understanding of, from reading the record, talking with Mr. Tucker himself, all that stuff. I'm going to let, if Tyrone's in, hopefully he comes in the chat. And if he's around and he can come in, say hi and talk about it, maybe even come up and talk to everybody. But I want to be able to get this information out. So, and I figured the best way to do it is just dive in and do a live, because to me, that's sometimes I think that's going to be the easiest based on everything that I've got going on, and I don't want to keep delaying getting it out. So here it is. This is what was going to be this will be the thumbnail. Look for it up. I'll put it up. I'll put up a time. I don't want to run late on something like this. I want to be able to hit it. I've got to go out of town tomorrow for a little while, so I'll be on the road for a little while. It's going to come. I'm going to do it, but I got to figure out the time tomorrow when we get back, how long we're going to be out of town. And I hope to be able to make it happen relatively early and not insanely late like we're doing right now, especially since we also have trial on Monday that starts at 8:30. We're on an early trial schedule, so I don't want to be running really hugely late for that, because the pace that they're running that case at, the judge is saying that they're going to be in closing arguments possibly by Tuesday or Wednesday. So we want to make sure we don't miss any of that. We stay caught up and we stay on top of it. But we're going to be talking about it. Why they silenced Franklin Tucker, because this is perhaps one of the most important things to understand about this case. If there's, this is it. Because the thing is, if they would have never done the gag order, this case would have been a national story by now. This case would have been gone by now. But the gag order is very important. And they didn't just gag him. They gagged his wife. They essentially stopped all discourse and discussion on this. And this is really, if the federal government, if somebody starts looking at this, this is part of, this is part of what gets him so upset. And he lived in silence for 4 years. He never got a chance to speak. And once you learn about and understand, like seeing the documents and seeing what they did and seeing how this all went down, understanding the gag order and what it meant for him and what he lived under all the way up until this trial began. So that's what a lot of people don't take into account. They think Franklin Tucker was able to come out and talk. That gag order was lifted the day of trial began. So that was when the first time he was able to speak publicly, was in his opening statement to those jurors. And then he was able to stand out and go out front and talk to court TV. And I heard some legal commentators that were kind of critical of him and saying, oh, yeah, he should be. And while, yes, I understand. Should he have been in there maybe talking to jurors and maybe getting a feel for why what their verdict was and all that stuff? Of course, that would have been the ideal situation. But the bottom line is, Franklin was just jubilant and so happy about the fact that he was able to talk, that he was able to speak freely for the first time, that he was able to talk to Vinnie Politan and talk to people out front of the courthouse and get this story out, that he felt that was important. As you see, I'm going to be wearing, throughout, I had this made for the videos. And for his trial when it comes up. Free Franklin Tucker, and it's got Todd O'Quinn on it, and then he took off in a truck, because that is the quintessential thing. So you're going to see this whenever I'm on air. I'm going to be wearing this sweatshirt. Like I said, I just had it personally made for myself because I thought, you know what, I want to have that. So I'm going to be wearing that in all the videos when I'm covering the Franklin Tucker case and making a statement, because I don't want this man to be forgotten. And I think we need to make sure he doesn't get forgotten, because he is very, very important to this case. Because like I said, it is in silence that these guys down in Key West are going to get away with what they're trying to get away with when it comes to Tyrone Tucker. And we cannot allow that to happen. We have to keep a full court press of keeping this thing out there and making sure they know there are interested people that do care about the outcome of that case and that are going to be watching and are not going to stop being vocal. And I hope as his case gets back in the media, I really hope that no, it'll be broadcasted. There's no way they're going to get away with that. Well, now, okay. Well, there's no chance. Florida is a sunshine. They have the sunshine laws. I think the state of Florida would. There's no chance, because that would play right into the idea that they're trying to cover something up. Listen, my opinion is, my read. There's two ways to read this. They either brought this new judge in because the old judge, they didn't want to have somebody who was part of the old guard or part of the problem, part of this whole thing, to come in and have to be the ones to dismiss it. They knew that was going to be too difficult. So I think they brought him in maybe to do that. But I really think the real reason they brought him in is because, just like Mr. Mansfield asked Tyrone Tucker, you think the Bubba system is after you. And the judge, the prosecutors, all of them, I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see two new prosecutors sitting down there, but that may not happen. They want to make this look like they're moving it out of Key West. They're moving it to Monroe County. They've got a new judge, a judge that's not interested, that's got no interest in this case besides justice. Now, that doesn't mean that that's actually the case. And if this judge comes in and says, I'm just coming in to screw Franklin Tucker and put him in jail and do everything I can to see him convicted, he can do that. But they believe this is going to give the optics of impartiality, the optics of a fresh eye, and that they're going to believe that this is going to give an added credibility when this judge comes in, and whatever he says, if he comes in and says, yeah, I'm denying this, or this isn't going to happen, or you're not going to do this, Mr. Tucker, I believe that's why they brought him in, because they want to give the appearance that this is on the up and up. And maybe he will be. I mean, maybe this guy will actually review things and look at it, and maybe he'll be disturbed by it. I mean, but unfortunately, with anything in this case, I'll believe it when I see it. I think that's how Mr. Tucker feels. And Ty, I think, is preparing for all potential ways this goes, but they're going to be less apt to try to pull bullshit if we're watching and if it's being watched. And I think it's going to be watched. And I think they would know that Vinnie Politan and company, and they're not going to forget this. And if you got a guy who's a pro se defendant, no, they can do the second trial. Yeah, there's no rules that prevents him. They're fully allowed to do that. The only thing would be is if there was something that Ty felt that there was a reason for some sort of misconduct, which nothing Mr. Mansfield's done would rise to the technical level of misconduct. I mean, he has lied, the way they conducted themselves, but as of now, no judge or anybody has said that what they did was wrong. The judge allowed it to happen. So that would not be something that he could, on the face of it, just say, well, we want Mansfield and Alvarez out of the case. But doesn't mean that they might not say, you know what, we want to get out of it. why don't we step aside? Let's get fresh everybody on this and just give the appearance, because what they're really wanting to do, in my opinion, is placate the media. They know people like Vinny Politano, Court TV, long crimes of correspondence. They know that there's people on social media like my channel and other channels that are taking an interest in this case. So I think what they're really hoping to do is say, listen, we're willing to bend over backwards to make sure this is done right, to get fresh eyes on this. And if a jury comes back after we do all of that and convicts Ty Tucker, how can you say there was injustice here? How can you say this was wrong? But the bottom line is we know it's wrong because we know there is no evidence. And we know the only way they ever get a jury to say guilty in this case is if they're twisting and turning the facts, because the facts are that Todd O'Quinn saw JoJo leaving the scene. Rory is the other guy, Detroit. From day one, from moment one, Detroit was the guy that was mentioned. Paula mentions about hearing and seeing only 2 people at the scene. She says that she heard voices. She did not hear Ty Tucker. She did not believe the guy had the body of Ty Tucker, although I think all of that is probably not that important because she couldn't really see. But point is, she couldn't see really the second guy, but she did see that guy leave. Then she heard someone get in a car and drive off. And then we have the most important witness, who's right here on this shirt, Todd O'Quinn. And there it is, guys. And he, where is it? I'll show it right here. I don't know if I get it. And then he took off in a truck. And that's what he says. He pulled off his mask and then he took off in a truck. And he says he saw the guy. Close cropped hair, bushy top, describes JoJo's hair. And then picks JoJo out in a lineup as the guy fitting the closest looking the closest to the person he saw running from the scene. Then the next day, Paula comes and says, everybody on the island is saying it was JoJo there with Detroit and that JoJo was supposed to come over where she was at and refused to come over because he was involved. And then you have, of course, Phelps going down to meet him 45 minutes after this happens. And then you have the bag of Paula's found where JoJo was staying, which he alleges, of course, it just suddenly got put in his footlocker, which was ridiculous. Just like allegedly the fingerprints on the knife, because they needed to explain why Rory's fingerprints were on the knife, because Phelps wanted it to be Tyrone, who was the one that did the stabbing. That allegedly they're throwing knives now, and who adds that little detail but JoJo, right? And JoJo, the guy who's been arrested, who was in police custody for several days, who has been told to wait around, who was in for drug charges. Oh, and wait a minute. What is Penny Phelps in charge of? High intensity drug task or drug trafficking area task force, HIDTA. Would you think maybe she made a deal with him? Potentially. And it never really gets addressed. There was a motion that was made, and Judge Jones poo-pooed it around. The state said that there isn't anything to their knowledge, but the defense was asking for it. There was a rumor that yes, John Travis Johnson was an informant. We know that we know that what's her name? Her name's slipping me, but there was the lady that never got charged, but was the one that was April. We know she was a confidential informant. We know she was involved in major cases for the task force. 4 cases that day that she made control buys on that day, allegedly, that were very important to Penny Phelps and the drug task force. Major buys, and one of the things is the money and drugs that came from that, which they're allowed to confiscate as part of otherwise known as seizures, drug seizures. And my dad used to tell me about how not getting into much detail, but we had the task force up in our area, and the task force agents and the sheriff's department and the people that were, which is they pair up with the sheriff's department in my area, state police, and even local police, that they were allowed to become part of the task force, but they made money off of the seizures. They were able to confiscate money, cars, houses, anything that was involved in the drug trade is allowed to be seized, auctioned off if it's property, and that money then goes into the hands of the task force or the sheriff's department, whoever is the head of it, and they get to allocate that money and put that money back into the community. It gets to be used in various different ways. But the bottom line is there's a lot of money around this, and that is another thing that is an indisputable fact. And if you question that, go back and watch Todd O'Quinn's initial interview with Pitcher. Okay? Because you'll see right on his notebook, those 5 letters, HIDTA, HIDTA. And where is Pitcher today? He's working for HIDTA, or at least he was. I don't know if he's still working for him now, but he was transferred back when all the shit hit the fan. He got transferred and became officially part of the drug task force, out of major crimes and into there. Was no longer a detective, but became full-time part of investigating. So, look, point of the matter is, there's a lot of shit that's around this case that they don't want. Anathea Clay, that's the lady I was slipping my mind. I don't know why I was slipping my mind. I guess it's late. It's what I get when I try to do a 4 o'clock in the morning stream. But the point is, there is no evidence in this case. There's none. There's just Penny Phelps fantasies or incorrect assumptions that led to things that locked her into those assumptions, locked her into having to include Ty Tucker as part of this case, to which then they proceed forward to then have to push John Travis Johnson to have to then include Ty Tucker as the guy that went in, and he gets to sit in the car and he gets to get out of jail free card, and they want to lock up Ty Tucker for the sole purpose of just, hey, we have no choice. It's him or us. And in their opinion, he was a homeless drug addict or a career officer. What they didn't understand is that the homeless drug addict had friends and family and people that cared about him, and he ends up getting a wife who has resources and he could fight back. That was unexpected. And then they tried their normal tactics. We haven't even talked about the Naheem Jackson debacle. I've got to talk about that. That might be a separate live where we're going and watch some of that, and I'll explain some of that. We're explaining that whole thing. But that happens right after the arrest, when it becomes apparent that the evidence is not present and that things aren't going the way they planned, and that none of the witnesses are linking ties. So they go and they put a career confidential informant with over 40, and we'll get into the motions on that and read the motion to exclude him and suppress him, and all the things that led up to why he got bonded out. That's why he got bail, was because of the things. And it ended up costing Colleen Dunn her law license for a period of time, which, by the way, she's now been reinstated and is about to head back. So we'll start working for the Key West Monroe County Prosecuting Attorney's Office, which is disturbing. But they plant him in, they move him all around, and then he comes up with a farcical story because they agree that if he says that he heard Tyrone Tucker confess to the crime, that he will get out. I believe he got paid, because he actually entered into an he went under contract for them, or maybe he didn't get paid for this, but he certainly got paid off because he got out. He got his charges dismissed, and got to go home and got released from jail 2 weeks after he comes forward and says what he heard. And then they go to court and say, no, he's a good Samaritan. And then they find out, no, he's had like over 40 different times he's worked as a confidential informant for the Monroe County Sheriff's Department. He was contracted. And in fact, he had several meetings with officers prior to relaying back the testimony, or relaying back what he heard. And then what he actually heard was absolutely ridiculous. He claimed it was all about a woman named Lauren, and Lauren Janae wasn't even involved in this thing at the time of all of it went down. It was ridiculous. It was absolutely ridiculous. It was so ridiculous that Judge Jones, even though he was had shown his bias many, many times. In that particular case, he said, "This is so egregious. We're going to set a bond for Ty," and they let him out. And it was at that moment, as all of that's coming out, as Ty puts a letter forth to the judge, triggers an IA investigation. IA investigation comes out, says this was a debacle of an investigation. There's missing tapes. There's missing videos. There's mishandled evidence. Evidence was stored improperly, and that's when we lead into what we're going to talk about tomorrow night, and that is the gag order. And that's how they remedied it, because there was a slow roar that was turning into a loud roar that was starting to run across the country, that was hitting all the major publications like the Washington Post, the New York Times, and Lauren Janae was using her influence and her ability to let that story travel, and they went after that in Ty Tucker's ability to speak and went in the flow of information, and they stifled it, and they killed it, and they allowed this thing to go on for the next 4 years. And we're going to talk about that tomorrow night. Why they silenced Franklin Tucker and gagged him and gagged his wife illegally, I might add, and we'll get into all of that tomorrow, hopefully, if all goes well and planned. Like I said, I am on the road for a little while tomorrow. But I want to do this before we have the status conference, although I don't really think anything is going to happen at the status conference, but we're going to do it. Oh, no, the judge, it's Dolores. It's already been determined there is a new judge. The previous judge was recused himself mysteriously. And there is a new judge now assigned to the case. And that's what the status conference is about on Monday. Now, previously, there was a pretrial conference with the old judge that was set originally for the 7th, and that would have rolled this thing right forward, because that was actually meant to set the next trial. They were going to come in, set the next trial. Franklin Tucker would not have had the opportunity to re-ask for the motion to dismiss to be reheard. That judge would have just said it's denied, there's nothing new, and he would have moved it right to trial. And Tyrone Tucker would be in trial next month. Instead, he got a new judge. He lucked out, and now we're not going to have to worry about trial for now. But we'll see. Like I said, whether or not how things really roll is going to be different. I really hope one of the things we hear coming out of this is that he's allowed to, at a very bare minimum, is to have assistance at the defense table, because if he doesn't have that, it's still going to be very difficult to try to navigate the case and make sure he can get everything in that he needs to, because it's very complicated. And for somebody who's not a lawyer, it's difficult to be able to react to things that are going on. And when you have people that are experienced attorneys like Alvarez and Mansfield, as corrupt as they might be, it doesn't mean they're not good attorneys. It doesn't mean they don't know the law, and they seem to know the law, and they're willing to take advantage of Ty and his lack of knowledge of the law. And depending on how the judge acts and whether the judge has a sense of fairness that says, like Vinnie Politan said, technically the judge and the prosecutor, as members of the bar, are supposed to help and assist, and they're also supposed to not take advantage of the fact that Tyrone Tucker is not an experienced attorney. They're not supposed to do things that are against the ethics, of what's required as an attorney against the personal rules of conduct. They're not supposed to do any of those things. They're supposed to help him and do it all fair and on the up and up. And normally, if you have a really strong case, you're not afraid to do things that way. But when your case is weak, or in their case, they have zero case, they got to do everything they can. They don't want a fair case. They don't want a fair hearing. They don't want any transparency. They just want to try to, get a conviction any way they can. And that's what they're out to do. So, all right, guys, it's 4:20 in the morning. Really, technically 3:20, but daylight savings time got us. Like I mentioned, I got to get on. I'll be up tomorrow. I've got to be up not crazily early. but early enough. But I enjoyed tonight. I hope you guys enjoyed tonight. If you didn't catch the entire broadcast, check out the broadcast because, and I agree, Dolores. I agree 100%. That is exactly what they're going to do. And that's why Judge Jones tried to warn Tyrone. He said, Tyrone, Ty, they can argue things. You'd be surprised what they can argue. And that's exactly what they did. It's exactly what they did. But this is where we're going to leave it. And how you doing, Robert? Thank you for jumping in there. I appreciate you coming in. We are just about to end. Unfortunately, I hate to report that we've been going strong for about 2 hours and 30 minutes. So I would encourage you to go back and check. We covered a lot of ground. We watched several verdicts and stuff like that. So it's been a long one. We went right through the daylight savings and jumped ahead in real time live on YouTube. So you can go back and re-experience all that. But tomorrow, what I was announcing to everyone, and I just turned off the thing. Tomorrow, I am going to be, in lieu of episode 6, we're going to do a special live version because of all the things I've had going on in my life. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to put together a production version. So I'm going to do it live. We're going to talk about why, and I'll throw it back up, why they silenced, there it is, why they silenced Franklin Tucker. We're going to talk about the gag order in preparation for the upcoming status hearing on Monday. In case that is dealt with, I want to get all those facts out to everyone. So we're going to be doing that. And yep. Thank you, Dolores. I appreciate it. But I think that's where we're going to end it, guys. I really appreciate everybody that came in the chat. I appreciate everybody that popped in and said hello throughout. Like I said, I think we had a good one today. Go back and check out, see what you missed, because there's lots of good stuff here. Verdicts and cases and things we're going to cover coming up, and we're going to be having some fun. Gotcha. Family court. Okay. So you handle domestic relations and all that stuff, I take it. Divorces and things of that nature. Yeah. Okay. That's the fun stuff. That's the fun stuff. Where you've got people fighting over the refrigerator and various other things too. Some of it's serious. I know, especially when it deals with child custody issues and matters and stuff like that. It can get real dicey, and it's real tough too. It's a very tough job. Very, very tough job, Dolores. But I appreciate you stopping in, Robert. And I'm sorry, like I said, you caught the end of it, but I'm going to start trying to do this a little earlier. I have this habit of letting my schedule get the better of me, and then I come on late. But I figured tonight, better late than never. My wife won't be happy when she finds out I'm up till 4:20 in the morning, but I will have to ask for her apology and forgiveness and for staying up so late. But I do have the excuse of the clock going forward, but I'm going to try to get on earlier because I'd like to get the opportunity to talk to more people and get more people in. I know a lot of people are probably sleeping and they're catching us on the recap. So anyways, with that said, guys, I appreciate everybody that popped in. I appreciate everybody that watched, and check it all out, guys, because we had, like I said, we had a pretty good show, packed show. I hope if all goes right, tomorrow night I'll be doing a live. We'll be going over the gag order. I look forward to that. It's going to be fun. Really important information, I think. And we'll go from there. So until then, guys, let justice prevail. And I will talk to you soon. Let's kick it off with the music. And then I'm going to head on out.